Hello, everyone. You are watching the Technology Magazine show, brought to you by Technology Magazine, AI Magazine, and Data Center Magazine, and BizClik Media Group. Oh, I almost forgot Mobile Magazine as well. My name is Scott Birch, and every 2 weeks we bring you all the latest news, analysis, and opinions from the world of technology. And joining me today, firstly, is AI editor Catherine Gray. Hi, Catherine. How are you today?
Hi, Scott. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Now, you might have noticed, regular viewers will notice that I'm not in my usual location today. I'm actually in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, taking a well-earned holiday. But also joining us today is a data center and mobile editor, Jose Wallbank. Jose.
Hi, Scott.
Hi, how you doing, Jose?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good. And just to remind you all, you can come and say hello by posting in the comments section just underneath where you're viewing the show. And also, you can go and vote in our LinkedIn poll. There's still time to do that, and we will bring you the results of that before the end of the show. So, Jose, why don't you tell us what the poll is this week?
Sure. So this week we asked the audience, a recent study from Oracle found that 83% of people believe businesses would make more progress towards sustainability and social goals with the help of AI. So with this in mind, what areas of sustainability in business do you think robotics and automation would help the most? Option A is collecting different types of data without error. B is making rational, unbiased decisions. C is predicting future outcomes based on metrics or past performance. D is being able to determine the necessary steps to meet set goals.
Right. Okay. Well, it'd be interesting to see what people think about that. I've got my own views, which I will no doubt share with you all later. Well, as I said, there's still time to go ahead and vote in that poll. And as I say, do come and say hello and tell us where in the world you are watching us from today. Don't forget, we'll also be having a bit of fun later on in the show with our regular section, which is Tech That Takes You Back. And this week it's going to be Catherine and Jose who are going to be competing against each other to see who's got the weirdest or the oldest bit of technology from the dark days of the past. Although it's probably not too dark looking at the age of you two. But first, before we go back, we're going to look a bit more to the future, and we have a special guest on the show today. Catherine, who are we welcoming into our live broadcast today?
Well, today we are being joined by Jeff Winter, and anybody who attended our Tech Live London show might recognise Jeff, as he joined me in the virtual Tech and AI stage for a fireside chat, which was really interesting. So he's joining us today to give us a little bit more information about AI and manufacturing. Oh, and here he is. So just before we dive into it, just to give a little context about what Jeff does, he acts as an industry advisor, helping US manufacturers digitally transform their businesses at scale. He has over 16 years of experience working for different industrial automation product and solution providers. So I'm sure he has a lot of interesting insight for us. So welcome, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. It's good to see you again. So I want to get straight into this. I'm sure you've got a lot of insight to share, and I know that there is a lot of people joining us today, keen to hear what you've got to say. So first of all, can you just tell me what is needed for good AI strategy in manufacturing?
So, and as you've come to know me, I really love the subject of AI. So let's jump in. I like to say that if you want to be effective with AI, you really need to change the way that you view it. And to do this, the entire company, or at least those who make decisions, need to have a basic understanding of what AI is and how it works and how it can benefit their role and the company. And when doing this, you'll find ways to integrate AI into way more decisions than you're probably doing right now. Because you have to remember, AI is essentially a decision-making tool. It can either automate decisions for you or augment your decision-making process. And as a business leader, I recommend working in an AI decision tree into most of your strategic planning processes, and that will help you decide where to use it. There are 3 simple questions you should really be asking yourself. First, can AI do it? Is it just technically feasible? Will the results get you what you want? And if the answer is yes, then the second question is the ROI there? Is there a solid business case? How will augmented AI decisions actually cause you to take different actions, and what will those actions result in? So if the business case is there, then the third question is, should we use it? And this is where responsible AI or ethical AI comes in. Deploying AI with good intentions to empower employees and businesses and society rather than cause harm. And you need to consider fairness, reliability and safety, security and privacy, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability as part of this. Now, all of this is predicated on a good data strategy. So your AI strategy must be in lockstep with your data strategy, which is usually far more detailed. Now, there's a lot of guides out there that can help break down useful elements of what should be included in a data strategy. But the 3 big ones that I like to talk about are your data governance strategy, which is really all about your people and your processes, your decision rights, your policies, and your standards. Then you have your data management strategy, which is about the data itself and the technology. And this includes data storage, data architecture, data quality, reference and master data. And then the third is you need to have a data analytics strategy. And this is about still data and technology, but more about the use of the data and the tools and the methods to link how the data is going to help you support your business decisions.
Definitely. I think there's obviously a lot of different mechanisms and turning cogs that people need to consider. So, I mean, like any industries, manufacturing is going through this real era of digital transformation. And how important do you think AI is for that?
So I love this question, and it's because it forces you to think about what AI and digital transformation really are. And I already said AI is basically a decision-making tool. So now let's talk about digital transformation. And my favorite definition so far is the integration of digital technology into all areas of the business that results in fundamental or transformational changes in how a business operates and the value that it brings to customers. Now, if we use that definition, then I would argue AI isn't necessary for digital transformation to occur. You could completely transform digitally without using it. But that being said, I think you would massively limit the capability and power of your transformation if you didn't use it. So if we use the Acatech Industry 4.0 maturity model as just an example, they break out your maturity into 6 levels. They have computerization, connectivity, visibility, transparency, predictive capability, and adaptability at the top. Now, the first 2, computerization and connectivity, are really what define Industry 3.0, and the remaining 4 describe Industry 4.0. So at the bottom of the Industry 4.0 scale, visibility, you're basically answering questions like, what's happening? Which a lot of companies still can't answer this question at scale yet, but you don't need AI to answer this question. But as you move up to level 4, you have transparency, which is, why is this happening? And then at levels 5 and 6, you're answering what will happen and how can autonomous response be achieved? But those 2, level 5 and 6, they just can't be done without AI. So I would describe AI, if utilized correctly, as the pinnacle or the epitome of Industry 4.0. It is the single technology that's really able to take advantage of all the other technologies out there, like IoT to generate data, and cloud to store and process data, and digital twins to create virtual representations, you name it. AI is what helps all those be far more useful than they could ever be on their own. And that's because at its core, AI is a decision-making tool that can either augment or automate your decisions.
It was interesting. I think AI can really be used as a tool to elevate people's digital transformation efforts. And like you said, it's really important to stay kind of competitive and all of those really good things that all businesses want. So I suppose we're talking now about the strategy and digital transformation, but I think something really important is kind of the why. Like, why should people do this? Why should people adopt it? How can AI improve manufacturing?
So this is another great question I like. And I like to start off by saying that according to McKinsey, AI alone can generate $1.2 to $2 trillion in value from manufacturing and supply chain management. That's crazy. That's a huge number. And that's because AI, I'm going to keep repeating it, is basically a decision-making tool. And so the sky is really the limit on how you can use it to improve manufacturing. If you can think of a question that you would like to know about what's happened, what is happening, or what is forecasted to happen, AI is most likely the tool that will help you answer it. All you really need is a lot of data, and AI can make sense of all that data. So one good way to know where AI can improve manufacturing is where people are starting to adopt it today. So according to IoT Analytics, a report that they had last year, predictive maintenance has held the top position for several years as the biggest use case for industrial AI specifically. Quality inspections and assurance come in at number 2. And this is mainly comprised of automated optical inspection, fault detection, product testing, and predictive quality simulation. Third was manufacturing process optimization. And that's mostly focused on autonomous machines and robots and production optimization and automated production planning. And number 4, and is actually really growing fast, is supply chain optimization. And that's mostly predictive inventory management or automatic warehouse optimization and route optimization and scheduling. But just those two, if we look at besides operations, there's 2 other places that I really encourage people to consider when it comes to this. And one is engineering, and the other is the business side of manufacturing. So if we start from engineering side, AI can be paired with high performance computing, HPC, to run millions of simulations for product design. And this could be especially for safety measures or stress testing. And then combined with IoT as part of a connected product strategy, and you can get tremendous amounts of insights about your product your features or your usage and in-field kind of product failures. And if we switch to the business side, cognitive AI is being used in many functions of the business to take advantage of tools that can quickly sift through huge amounts of data, especially unstructured, and make that data both readily available and find connections and links automatically between the items. And it can do this with hundreds of thousands of files in hours or maybe even minutes. And this allows you the ability to internally search for stuff like pictures or presentations, CAD drawings, or even handwritten notes, and have them immediately at your fingertips, correctly organized and suggesting other things that you should check out that are related. So don't just limit your thinking to just the operational side of manufacturing, but the entire business of manufacturing.
Oh, definitely. I think the technology is so multifaceted that the options are almost endless. And I think something that you've kind of touched on kind of throughout our chat is AI is great if implemented correctly. And I think that's something that leaders and experts say all the time. It's great if it's implemented correctly. So kind of what does that best in class usage look like?
So I would say that there's really 3 things you should look for in kind of a best in class AI driven company. First, I would say is just a simple question. Is your use of AI positively impacting the bottom line? Not just that you're using AI, but are you repeatedly getting value out of using it? Every company will have a different determination of value, but the answer should unequivocally be yes. And if the answer is yes, you should see AI directly helping to grow the business linear year over year. And second, are all business functions using AI? So one department successfully using AI could make a big impact. But if all the other departments aren't using it, this isn't best in class. When all the departments kind of collectively are using it, you could start to really actually push the boundaries of science and technology. You can end up figuring out new ways of making materials, or new ways of managing energy, or achieving sustainability, or engaging with customers, or new business models, and ultimately coming up with entirely new ways of innovating for your company. So this goes way beyond just improving efficiencies or effectiveness, but fundamentally changing the business. That's a good example of exceptional use of AI. And lastly, I would say when you build a self-sustaining AI culture in the company, that's one of the other big things I would look at, where everyone and anyone can quickly take advantage of AI for their particular applications. And since you're never going to have a company of data scientists, you're going to need to take advantage of low code or no code tools that let most people quickly spool up AI systems and models. And there's new tools out there that literally let you translate normal human language into programming language. So you could just type what you want and lines of code or entire functions can be written for you. And this now brings AI into the hands of a much broader audience, and it allows business leaders and domain experts to harness the power and leverage AI almost immediately. So when you can get most people finding ways to augment or automate their decisions with AI, that's when I think you've reached best in class.
Oh, definitely. And thank you so much. I think this is why people call it their AI journey, because there's so many different steps, so many different things that they need to do to achieve that best in class. But sadly, the show is only half an hour, so that's all we've got time for kind of today. We could sit here for another half an hour, I'm sure, and discuss. But thank you again for joining us today. It's been really, really interesting.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, just to echo that, thanks for joining us, Jeff. Brilliant insights there, and I'm sure we'll be getting a great response to that as well. Now, for those of you watching, make sure you visit the websites for Technology, AI, Data Center, and Mobile magazines, where you can read the latest issues and you can watch all the video content too. And you can also catch Jeff's fireside chat from our Tech London live event, which Catherine mentioned earlier. You can catch that on our websites and YouTube channels as well. Anyway, still to come after the break, we've got Joes and Catherine going head to head in tech that takes you back. So go put the kettle on. We'll see you in about 5 minutes.
Jason Fritsch. I'm Senior Vice President of Global Sales for Juniper Networks Cloud segment. There are a few key elements that are common across most cloud provider customers, which are they architect their networks to remove as much complexity as possible so they can scale them as quickly as possible. So they begin with the end in mind. Partnering with vendors like Juniper to design, build, and deploy scalable networks that can be heavily automated and easily automated, so that it's not just what you build, but how it integrates into their operational model. Because one of their biggest advantages is the automation that they build, so that they can do more and scale quickly with less due to that automation.
The idea of supply chain constraints is something that has always been part of my working world, but this is the first time it's front page news. I'm Mitch Haynes. I'm the Vice President of Supply Chain Planning and Fulfillment at Juniper. The role we see ourselves trying to play is finding that true signal of data, making sure that it's consistent and complete and transmitted across the entire supply network. It's a corporate imperative that we have to invest and understand and protect our supply chains.
What's also evolving around the cloud customer experience is ease of doing business. So it's not just about delivering features and high scale and high performance, but how we transact and how we deliver our own supply chain and our portfolio in ways that our customers can be comfortable with so that we can scale with them. Their experience with Juniper is not just the technology that we deliver, but the business engagement and the business processes that support that to make that as easy as possible.
There's probably going to be a much greater appreciation for the sharing and the transparency of data through the multiple partners throughout the supply chain. And so that's what I think is going to be probably the biggest takeaway.
What sets SC Ventures apart is that we leave no stone unturned in ensuring we extract the most value from technology. My name is Thorsten Newman. I've taken on the role of Chief Technology Officer at Standard Chartered Ventures, the innovation arm of Standard Chartered Bank. SC Ventures leverages technology and innovation to really excel by keeping an open approach to working with partners, introducing new technologies, undertaking POCs, and creating this experimental environment in which our ventures, as well as our entrepreneurs, can thrive to innovate. Digital banking in 2022 is really at the forefront of where we're looking to tap into new market segments and create an entirely new digital experience, taking on the unmet needs of consumers and their day-to-day financial services needs. So I'm quite excited for the potential ahead, as well as the current state of technology innovation, allowing us to leverage SaaS providers, continuing to accelerate cloud infrastructure, as well as a lot of the automation tools that have come into play, bringing a lot of benefits to the businesses that we are setting up today.
Welcome back. So yeah, you're watching the Technology Magazine show, and in case you missed us at the start here, I'm joined today by Catherine Gray and Josephine Walbank, and earlier on we had Jeff Winter from Microsoft giving an excellent discussion on AI and applications there. So if you missed that, make sure you watch the show on catch up later on. It will be available on demand. Now, later than advertised, as they say, we're going to come to the news next. So if Ernie is at the ready there, our erstwhile video guru, let's have a look at the latest technology, AI, and data center news. Perfecto. Sorry for the sirens, by the way, if you can hear it here. It's all happening here in the UAE. Okay, so Catherine, why don't you kick off with the latest news? And I think you're going to talk about AI.
AI soon, but first I want to share something from Technology Magazine. So we have a really, really talented intern with us at the moment called Charlie, who has written an article about diversity in the space industry. So I really want to share this because obviously we are all aware about the technology industry's kind of gender differences and how there's a real drive to kind of encourage more women and people of colour into the industry as well. But as Charlie highlights in this article, that the space industry is still lagging, and it hasn't really increased the amount of women in the industry since the 90s, which is obviously, especially in recent times, quite shocking. But interestingly, Microsoft and Oracle are working together to kind of change the hiring process, so to diversify it with the use of technology, which I think is really interesting. Because obviously you wouldn't think that you could use technology in such a way. But yeah, so it's a really, really interesting read from Charlie. And I definitely think it kind of links back to the poll as well, because that talks about how AI is there to kind of help drive forward sustainability. And obviously underneath that is diversity and inclusion. And there is a way for kind of data analysis and things like that to help the recruitment process become more diversified, particularly in space. So just wanted to share that one with everybody. Before we move on to AI.
Sorry, yeah. Before we move on to AI, because you just reminded me, because I'm just in the process of writing a feature for an upcoming issue of Sustainability Magazine, and we're talking about DE and I. And one of the areas where I feel it's often overlooked, and something that's particularly relevant to technology industries is age and ageism. And a lot of tech companies in particular have been accused of ageism when it comes to recruitment. But also, it's a really interesting time right now because, well, what normally happens, or traditionally what's happened, is that when there are tough times, like when there's a recession about to hit, or when companies are shedding staff, which is happening a lot in the tech industry at the moment, what often happens is it's the older employees who are the first to get fired and the last to get hired. So it's really interesting to see how that can be addressed, because obviously people who are more experienced, more life experience, more experience within the actual industry and the business have a lot to bring to the team. But it's often at times like this when there's disruption, or when there's headwinds when it comes to profits and just business in general for the tech industry, that people who are maybe older tend to lose out. So I'm waffling a little bit, but that is a really important topic, and it is something we're going to be addressing in Sustainability Magazine. But let's bring that back around to AI then. So what's the main story that's caught your eye, Catherine?
So I wanted to share something from the magazine. So obviously we're in August, which means AI has got a new issue out. So this is about chatbot technology, and maybe I am in a weird minority, but I really don't like chatbots. I am the first person to message them back and go, let me speak to an agent, let me speak to a human. For whatever reason, I just have no patience at all. And there's this whole thing about chatbots, are they enhancing or diminishing the customer experience? Definitely coming out of COVID, there's a lot of research that's shown that we really crave human interaction, and that actually this could be really diminishing kind of the way we view different companies. And interestingly, I think it's Accenture found that people are actually expected to have more conversations in their lifetime with a chatbot than their spouse, which is wildly, I'm not sure how that works, but apparently it's true. So yeah, it's just interesting. I was expecting to kind of come back with it, overwhelmingly people saying that it diminishes the customer experience, but actually a lot of people in business really do believe that it enhances it, because it can streamline those queries that are less urgent than the other ones, and those urgent ones then can go straight to the human kind of customer experience person, who is then not overwhelmed with silly little requests that the bots can do themselves. So it's an interesting one. I know some people don't enjoy speaking to people on the phone. Other people enjoy the chatbots. I personally do prefer speaking to people, but it looks like they're here to stay, so there's not really much I can do about that.
It is an interesting one. I mean, obviously not all chatbots are created equally, and I've had varying experiences. Some chatbots have been great, like as you said, if you're just trying to find out some information that the chatbot can ascertain for a series of predetermined questions, and it can actually give you the result that you want, then that's great. And then if it can't, if it puts you through to an actual person to solve that issue, the chatbot is serving its purpose. But then equally, I've had conversations with people in a chat environment, but not a chat bot, but a chat human, where that process has been even more frustrating in lots of ways. Often because they're running through a call sheet, they're running through a method. They ask you the same questions. So even if you've already answered or provided information, they have to go through their script, I suppose, to follow the regulations and to do it properly. But it can be incredibly frustrating. But don't be down on chatbots. Chatbots have got a place. They've got a place in the world. But I do understand what you're saying. I mean, personally, I don't like going into shops and using automated tills, like serve yourself, where you have to scan the barcode. I find those disturbing. Anyway, me. But it is really interesting. Now, Joes, you've been quiet all show so far, so it's about time we heard from you. And I think you're going to highlight. We've got a new data center magazine out for August, and what highlights have you got as well?
Sure. So before I go into Data Center Magazine, I wanted to share a highlight from Mobile Magazine, our latest news post. And I'm also sticking with the chatbots theme. And I wanted to share a really interesting story that we published about Meta's new AI chatbot. which apparently has been making a few blunders of late. So the chatbot, which is named Blenderbot 3, has apparently been a very popular interviewee because it doesn't really hold back. It's kind of shown the downside of AI, I suppose, from Facebook's perspective. But in one interview, Blenderbot was quoted as describing Mark Zuckerberg as creepy and manipulative. The AI operates independently and creates its own independent answers. And I suppose when interviewers kind of figured this out, it led to a series of interviews, because there's a later one with BuzzFeed in which the chatbot was quoted as saying that Zuckerberg is a good businessman, but his business practices are not always ethical. It is funny that he has all this money and still wears the same clothes. So although the technology is incredibly advanced, and there's no question of that, it definitely poses some interesting questions about the uncontrollable nature of AI and how it will be implemented in the next few years, and how kind of more unexpected concerns companies need to watch out for.
Absolutely. I suppose what you're saying is there's no filter, I suppose. But I imagine that the AI will somehow have some kind of filter built in. But I don't know where you draw the line on that. And what should you say and what shouldn't you say? It's something that we all probably debate several times a day when we're dealing with people anyway. But look, let's move on. Why don't you share something from Data Center magazine as well now?
Absolutely. So I wanted to spotlight the front cover article from our August issue, which was intriguingly titled "The Art of Being Like Water." In it, we spoke to John Eves, who's the founder and CEO of Edge Centers, about the rapid growth of his company throughout Australia, Asia, and other key data center markets, and his predictions for the future of the Edge. And obviously, as a founder of the world's first off-grid data center company, he was there's not really anyone better to answer our questions. So we're also obviously a lot of people have been wondering what exactly does it mean for a data center to be like water? And according to John, it's all about deploying edge technologies with precision and making them the same shape as the space that they're needing to fill.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that does make sense. I'm glad you've actually explained that. And this was also a really good front cover, wasn't it? If it's the one that I'm thinking of, I think it was voted as our cover of the month as well. But yeah, really great interview and feature. So you can go and read that. And of course, as I said, you can read all of our content. If we can have the ticker up, please, Ernie. You can visit all of our websites that we've mentioned here today. So we have, the other ticker, please, Ernie, the one with the websites on. There you go. So our website, so technologymagazine.com, aimagazine.com, datacentermagazine.com, and just to mix things up a bit, mobile-magazine.com, just to keep you on your toes. But if you visit those websites, you'll find all of our latest issues, all the video content, all the great features that we've got as well, and of course our daily news content. But let's move on and let's take a look at the results of the poll. So Joes, before we give the result, just remind us what the question was.
Of course. So the question was, what areas of sustainability in business do you think robotics and AI would help with the most?
Okay, and do you have the results?
I do, yeah. So by quite a considerable margin, the winner was to collect data without error, which got 41% of the votes. Underneath that was to make unbiased decisions, which got 28%. And the bottom two were to predict future outcomes, which got 19%, and to determine steps to meet goals, which got 13%.
Okay, what do you make of that, Catherine?
Well, pleased that the one that I voted for won. That's always nice to see. I was actually surprised that the unbiased decisions one was up so high, because there is such a discussion at the moment about can AI ever be unbiased, because obviously it's getting programmed by different people who inherently have their own bias, data which is biased in itself. So I think it's interesting that such a good portion of people voted for that one, where that's actually, I would maybe argue it's something that it couldn't do. So I think that's the thing for me that I was the most surprised by.
Okay, well, look, we'll leave the poll there. I'm just actually reading some comments that have come in from some of our viewers who were making comment about Jeff Winter's discussion on AI there. We have Eugene saying, thank you for the great conversation about AI as a decision-making tool. Fantastic points and examples. There you go. Thank you, Eugene. And Tim also saying, very informative. Well done. AI can help almost every department, not just manufacturing. And I think we'll also take a comment from George Hopkin as well. It says, I wonder why any company would even consider anything other than ethical AI. It's not like they'd advertise for an unethical CEO or a morally bankrupt CFO if this were purely an HR thing. Good point. Well made. Right. Let's move on then. It's the time that some of you may have been waiting for. I know I certainly have. Live this week from London and Dubai. It's tech that takes you back. Well, those graphics might have been straight out of the 1980s, but I'm imagining that the tech that you're showcasing today, you two, is probably a little bit later than that. But I'm guessing, obviously, I'm guessing. So who's going to go first? I think, Joes, you're going first, and we have a video clip, and you're going to talk me through this tech.
Absolutely. So I don't know if you can hear me over the video, please.
Yeah.
There we go. So I've chosen a classic toy from the late 90s, early noughties, a Bop It. I don't know how many had a Bop It back in the day, but I thought it's one of those pieces of technology that somehow has remained memorable. Like, we still know of it, we still talk about it, and for such a simple piece of kit, it's still being evolved. New ones are still coming out, but you can't beat the original. And that very, very retro advert was an absolute winner for me.
Okay, all right. Ernie, I've seen enough. Remove that from my gaze. Catherine, can you beat that? Can you beat the Bop It?
I hope so. So I chose something that I had. I think I was quite young, probably about 7 or 8. If there is a video, if Ernie could play it. So yes, there I am at 7 or 8 years old with my diary. It's not me, just a disclaimer. And it's a voice-activated diary. So you give the diary your password. I'm pretty sure mine was something like flower, and you say flower into it and it opens. And then if, for example, my brother tried to get into my diary, it would not recognize his voice and would not let him in. So I think for me, I just thought this was quite interesting. I didn't think when I was writing in my voice activated password journal at 7 years old, I would then so many years down the line be writing about kind of voice recognition technology and what AI is used to go into that. So I think for me, it was just quite interesting because at such a young age, I was writing in this, and now you wouldn't even think to have a voice recognition diary because people probably don't even write in diaries anymore. They type them on their computers. But I just thought it was quite interesting from such a young age having that to now probably writing about it, probably in more technical terms, kind of what the different cogs of that technology and how it works. So that was mine for the day.
Okay, all right. Right. Well, I am going to make a decision. Now, I'm pretty sure when I looked at that clip, it said copyright 2016 Mattel. So that would make it only 6 years old. So are you telling me that 6 years ago?
No, I couldn't. That is an older version of it, a newer version. Sorry, I couldn't find anything from kind of like the early 2000s on YouTube, unfortunately. So it's the updated version, I think.
All right. Well, look, let's put people out of their misery. Catherine, I'm going to make you the winner because I did like the way that you sold it a little bit more. I am familiar with the Bop It, Joes. I've never actually bopped it myself, but it looks like the kind of thing that would really annoy parents, to be honest. Whereas Catherine's did have a smart little bit of tech involved. So I'm going to declare Catherine the winner, but good effort all around. So thanks for that. Okay, we're going to wrap things up. That's all we've got time for this episode. I really hope you've enjoyed the show. And obviously, make sure you tune in again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you for interacting with us in the comments as well, if you've been watching us live, and for taking part in the poll. And remember, this show is available to watch on demand as well. So please do share it with colleagues and anyone interested in any of the topics we've been talking about, particularly AI, of course. Thanks to Joes and Catherine and to Ernie and the rest of the video team. And of course, our very special guest, Jeff Winter from Microsoft. This has been a BizClik Media Group production, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.